For several long seconds, nobody moved. The only sound was the faint crackle of the barbecue and the distant barking that still echoed somewhere beyond the neighboring gardens. Tommy glanced towards Frank. "You hear that?" Frank nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the wooden gate at the end of the garden. Before he could answer, bang! The noise exploded through the afternoon. Everyone jumped. It came from the back gate. Not a knock. Not someone calling round. Something had hit it with enough force to shake the fence on either side. Rosalia stopped running. The smile disappeared from her face. What was that? Nobody answered. Another crash. The entire gate rattled violently. Gemma stood so quickly, her chair tipped backwards onto the patio. Someone's there. Then came a voice. Raw. Panicked. Help. The word cracked, as though the man had screamed it until his throat was bleeding. Please, help me. Tommy was already moving before he realized it. Frank stepped in front of him. Stay back. The banging became desperate. Wood splintered. Metal hinges groaned under the impact. Please. I'm bitten. They're coming. The final words barely sounded human. They were swallowed by panic. Everyone stared towards the gate. No one knew what to do. Mark looked towards Tommy. We should call the police. Ronnie was already reaching for her phone. No signal. She frowned. What? I've got nothing. Tommy pulled his own phone from his pocket. 1 bar. Then none. What the? Even Frank looked confused. The network's gone. Another violent crash interrupted them. The gate shook so hard that flakes of old paint drifted onto the grass. The man's voice came again, closer this time. They're right behind me. Frank looked back at everyone. His expression had changed. He wasn't just worried anymore. He looked guilty. We can't leave him out there. Tommy stepped beside him. We don't know what's happening. We know he's asking for help. Another scream. Not from the gate, further away. Then another. Different voices. Some screaming. Some shouting. Then silence. The hairs on Tommy's arms stood up. Something about that silence felt wrong. Far too sudden. Frank slowly walked across the garden. Every eye followed him. Frank. Gemma called nervously. He didn't stop. Frank! Tommy caught up with him. You sure about this? Frank looked at the shaking gate. If that was one of us. He paused. I'd hope someone opened it. Tommy couldn't argue with that. Together they reached the gate. The banging had stopped. Completely. Only heavy breathing could be heard from the other side. Frank rested one hand on the latch. You all right? For a moment. Nothing. Then a weak voice answered. Please. So much blood. Tommy exchanged another uneasy glance with Frank. Slowly, Frank lifted the latch. The old metal lock clicked loudly in the silence. He pulled the gate open. The man collapsed through it. He hit the grass face first before rolling onto his back with a sickening groan. Gasps escaped around the garden. His clothes were soaked with blood, not small stains. His entire shirt was dark red. One sleeve had been almost torn away. Deep bite marks covered his forearm. His face. Tommy felt his stomach tighten. The left side of it had been ripped open. Skin hung loose across his cheek. One eye was swollen almost shut. Blood ran from his mouth every time he tried to breathe. He shouldn't have been alive. Yet somehow, he was. The man looked up at them with terrified eyes. His lips trembled. There. He coughed violently. Blood splattered across the grass. They're killing everyone. His breathing became uneven. Every breath sounded wet, painful, as though his lungs were slowly filling. Tommy knelt carefully beside him. Who did this? The man tried to answer. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. His body suddenly shuddered. Once. Then again. Harder. His fingers curled into the grass. Every muscle in his body locked tight. Frank stepped backwards. What the hell? The man's breathing stopped. For one terrifying second. Everyone thought he had died. Then, his eyes snapped open. For